Yeah. Anything else STLE related? Okay. So next, I'm going to talk about the future of electric vehicles and fluids, kind of. I'm not talking about, what a new fluid's going to look like or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about all the kind of factors that are going to go into this. And I have to say that the data for this, like the near the end of the presentation, there's a couple of graphs, and this is all compiled by Jeremy Steyer, who's our OEM liaison. He's been very involved with anything automotive and things like that, like going to Detroit for the meetings with the OEMs and stuff. So, well, I'll get into it later, but it's a lot of data. So, as you all know, there's various approaches to electrification, and we're just showing here the difference between an internal combustion engine vehicle, hybrid electric vehicle, plug-in hybrid, and a battery electric vehicle. And I didn't include fuel cell yet here. But so for the internal combustion engine, it's 3 gas pumps. For hybrid, it's 2. And then for a plug-in hybrid, it's even less. But you need to be plugged in and charging, and then a battery electric vehicle you're charging. I will say that I now have a hybrid vehicle, and I use much less fuel than I used to. And this is the same car, same brand car. So this is a big question. What is an EV fluid? Right now, I would have to say nobody really knows for sure. This is a blow up of an electric drive motor, and you can see the gears in the left hand side, and then the motor more towards the middle to the right hand side. So battery electric vehicles, fuel cell electric vehicles don't have a combustion engine. They're powered by 1 or more electric motors. The motors run at very high speeds for 20 or 30,000 RPM for efficiency. So they need a reduction gear set to be able to translate proper speed and power to the wheels. And the reduction gearbox is coupled closely with the e-motor, but some of them use the same fluid as the e-motor, and that's a wet system, and then some of them have they're separate. So what kind of performance do you need? Well, right now, the kind of thing that they've been using is ATF. And so the viscosity and other properties are pretty similar, but they're thinking they need additional requirements. One of the things that everybody's kind of worried about is copper corrosion, because there's a lot of copper in that motor, even though those wires are insulated, but they're worried about things like failures in the coating and other parts that are in there. And there's some new ASTM test method for copper, but not everybody's using that. And anyway, people are worried about electrical conducticity. So depending on the design, some people want it to be insulating and some people want it to be conducting. So how are you going to develop a fluid or additive package for something that you don't know which one it's going to be? Thermal properties, because this gets pretty warm. I think people know that, electricity and all that kind of thing, you have data centers, they need to be cooled. These electric motors need to be cooled. Aeration, because the motors are going so fast, even though it may be a closed system, you have the potential for aeration. And then, of course, the old standbys, wear and EP. So for wear and EP, so the challenge, what are the battery electric vehicle challenges? Well, so far, there are very few field failures reported due to wear and EP. But OEMs don't want to share any details. They may be over-engineering the fluids or even the equipment in order to prevent failures. And right now, it looks like there's minimal wear even after something like 200,000 miles. Future requirements might be different. Higher speeds for more efficiency, higher loads. And right now, you don't see a lot of heavy duty vehicles with that are totally electric, but it's probably coming. And so in those cases, maybe you're going to have an issue with wear and EP. So you can't predict performance now because there's no standardized test methods. Don't know the correlation between what we call bespoke or individual test methods. Like individual OEMs have their own method, and there's no real correlation between that and field performance. Copper corrosion. Basis of the concerns is that there's more copper components in these systems, motor windings, couplings, and if you have an EP or an anti-wear agent, a lot of times they contain sulfur, and sulfur is corrosive to copper. So that's why there's a concern. Right now, don't really know how much you need EP and anti-wear. Like I said, nobody's seen any failures after a long usage period. So, and so you have to balance your formulation just like every other kind of formulated fluid that you make. So far, not really finding any dissolved copper in the fluids after being used. Sure.
So Ken wants to know that are there specified fluid change intervals for EV fluid?
I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah. Electrical connectivity. So I mentioned that earlier. Some want you to transmit electrical current, some want you to resist it. Again, OEMs are probably over-engineering to prevent, grounding and things like that. They'll do things that so there's grounding. I always comment about Wen Yang from Tesla talked at NLGI about Tesla developed a small bearing, the sole purpose of which was to dissipate charge. So it had they had to have a special lubricant for it, but nobody's going to get rich off of that lubricant because it's just a tiny amount in a small part of the engine. And things haven't been around long enough to really know if aging has any effect. Antioxidants. Well, you think you need some, but these systems are closed primarily, so they're not getting a lot of oxygen introduced, and so it's not. We don't really know how much antioxidants they need.
So heat and stress.
Well, heat is different, yeah. And so far they're not seeing a lot of effect from that, but and an antioxidant doesn't necessarily work against thermal degradation. That I think the issue with thermal is what additives you have in there more than the fluid itself, but I could be wrong. So they've got these issues, and they're people are trying to develop fluids, and people are trying to develop actually engines and drive systems. But one of the things that affects EV usage is adoption. And according to Klein, right now, PCMO and HDMO account for about over half of the global lubricant additive usage. But engine oils for internal combustion engines are changed on a regular basis. You throw away the old, or it gets re-refined, and you put in new. Other lubricants like bearings and greases and things aren't changed that frequently, if at all. And so, from my company's point of view, electrification is going to drastically affect lubricant additive usage. So here is. I'll get to the fluid changes kind of thing. So if you look at, we're looking at an estimated vehicle life of 350,000 kilometers for an engine oil or a BEV drivetrain. Average fill volume for an engine oil is 5 liters, and for a BEV drivetrain, it's 1 to 1.5 liters. Average drain interval for an engine oil is 10,000 kilometers. And for a BEV drivetrain, 200,000 kilometers. So already right there, it's less fluid to begin with, and you're replacing it less often. And so, as I said, we're estimating the vehicle life at 350,000 kilometers. So that's 35 oil changes for internal combustion engine, and maybe 1 or 2 for a BEV drivetrain. So the total fluid volume is 180 liters for the combustion engine, and 2 to 4.5 liters for the BEV drivetrain. So if an additive is used at 0.1%, you're using 0.18 liters in that engine oil for internal combustion engine, and 0.002 of a liter for the BEV drivetrain. And so for 1 million vehicles, that's 180,000 liters of engine oil for internal combustion, and 2,000 to 4,000 liters for BEV drivetrain. So total volume of a component used at 0.1% treat rate is 1.8 liters for the engine oil, and for the 1 million vehicles, and 0.02 for the BEV drivetrain. So it's a lot less usage. So the next thing is adoption rate. So rate of adoption, is, I think everybody knows, depends on how many car owners there are, how many new cars are sold, the customer acceptance with respect to range anxiety. So like I have a 60-mile one-way commute. I have range anxiety for an electric vehicle. I think today they could do it, but at first they couldn't. And then there's a huge thing with the government influence. So there've been a lot of incentives. I think a few years ago in the US, you could deduct on your taxes if you had an electric vehicle. I don't think you can do that anymore. Actually, you could do it for a hybrid at one point, but that's long gone. For example, in Europe, they were saying, no more internal combustion engines being produced after, I forget what the date was, it's in here somewhere. But they've kind of relaxed that because, people aren't buying them. But one of the reasons is infrastructure. So first of all, charging stations aren't everywhere. You don't see them anywhere you go. Tesla's got that figured out to a certain extent because the car tells you where the next one is. And so that can help a little bit. But the problem is power, and we're in the right place for that. You need a lot of power if they're going to have charging stations in all these places, and if everybody's going to have electric cars. So, and then not just sales, but the car park changes with new car sales, but also with how fast cars are scrapped, and like how soon you get rid of your car. I keep mine a pretty long time, so I'm kind of making that go a little longer. So car park is the number of cars that are in use. So challenges to widespread adoption of electric vehicles is, like I said, charging stations, and then the electric grid, which needs to be able to charge all those cars, and the power to that grid. If it's not green, then you're not gaining anything, basically. Battery materials. Nuclear is really good, but it has other things that people object to. Yeah. Battery materials. People in the grease industry know about lithium being an issue with respect to availability, because lithium is in like all the batteries that are in your phones and in your computers and these cars. So and it's not just lithium, but there's other elements that are being used that there's maybe not good enough supply of at this point. And I mentioned range anxiety. That's the number one reason for people not buying BEVs. I think a reason too is that they're more expensive than an internal combustion engine. I did read something the other day that, so I said, well, what's, say, the cost of ownership? And they compared a Tesla cost of ownership to be the same as an SUV. So if you have an internal combustion engine SUV, so if you have a hybrid, you're ahead of the game. That's the way I look at it. That's why I have a hybrid. Thermal management. So it's not just in the car, but in the power grid. If you you're making you have batteries and things, but I'm thinking of AI data centers and things. They need to be cooled. So it's not just cars, but it's other things too. And then I mentioned early on about standardization. Right now, it's the Wild West with respect to test methods and requirements for EV fluids. So this is the graph I alluded to when I started. And basically, Jeremy has taken, lots of data from lots of different sources that predict, when ICEs will go away compared to when battery electric vehicles will come into prominence. And it's a little hard to see, but he's looking at all sales, sales of hybrid electric vehicles and battery plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and battery electric vehicles. And so the left-hand graph is looking at sales. And so where the circles are, so sales of hybrid electric and battery electric versus ICE only are predicted to be at 50-50 in mid-2026. And I actually kind of think that's been moved out a bit because of different changes in regulations. I mean, US car companies have kind of backed off on their manufacture of battery electric vehicles because they're not selling. So, and China is like one of the leaders for making battery electric vehicles, but a lot of them are sitting around because people aren't buying them there either. So that's when it's the hybrids and the battery. So anything with a battery versus ICE only, mid-2026. Sales of ICE containing versus battery only. So that's kind of, you take the hybrids and the plug-in hybrids and the internal combustion engine versus battery only, they say will reach about 50-50 in 2042. So that's sales. But the other part is car park. So when like a company like mine that we sell a lot of additives into engine oil, engine oil is going to be used in internal combustion engines as long as they're around. And so we're looking at the car park of the hybrids and batteries, so versus ICE only, maybe mid 2037, it's going to be 50-50. And if it's going to be ICE containing versus battery only, well past 2050. So it's a long time before there's not going to be any internal combustion engines on the road. This is saying when it's going to be 50-50. So people aren't going to get rid of cars just because, unless of course the government steps in and say you can't have that anymore. That won't fly, I don't think.
Now in manufacturers, like Chinese manufacturers, that I would say 50% of the cost of a car made in China. It's not allowed to get into the home, right? So you cannot really compete in the market.
Yeah.
So you got the Tesla and the Hyundais, but because they have an entry barrier, that's why you don't see those $10,000 cars.
Yeah.
And something that you're not considering is gas prices. So the pump today was 1.8. Very different when it was 1.20
Yeah.
a month ago. So if the government is stepping in, but in the opposite direction of allowing that growth, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think, well, and that's another way a government can influence it by taxing, gasoline kind of thing. So, there's like the, whatever the quote unquote normal fluctuation of gas prices based on supply and demand, but there's also a lot of taxes placed on it because people use it all the time. And so, for example, in Connecticut, the last time gas prices were really high, Connecticut reduced their taxes for a little bit to bring it down a little bit.
They tried it in Canada, called it carbon tax.
Carbon tax, yeah.
Hopefully the election, so that's.
Yes, yeah, that's what happens, yeah. So basically, a summary is adoption is gonna of electric vehicles will definitely change the lubricants market. The kind of the point is it's going to be a lot longer than it's not immediate. It's not rumors of our demise have been greatly exaggerated. But then differences in OEM approaches, as well as the secrecy surrounding their various configurations, it's hard to focus development on a fluid. One of the things about engine oils is like API has certain specifications, and the thing with that is then everybody has to meet those specifications, so they have to pass those tests. They may do it different ways, but they got to pass those tests. In electric vehicles, there's nothing like that yet. There may be eventually, but they don't even know what to test at this point. Like I say, there's maybe 1 or 2 ASTM tests that kind of address some of it, but it's definitely not the whole thing. I mean, for an engine oil now, the engine testing you have to do, the bench testing that you have to do, is very involved, and it probably will end up being somewhat like that eventually for electric vehicles, I think. And yeah, so the question is when, where, and how much. So it depends on a lot of different things. And like I say, the total switch is bad news for lubricant and additive suppliers. It's a long time till it's going to happen. So it gives plenty of opportunity